TNKR Media.
Welcome to Inspiring Entrepreneurs Montreal, showcasing stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and Mike Newton with you today. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Dan. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
We're into our 15th year, Mike, and it's so remarkable. I've never had a media gig last this long because it's just so much fun, frankly. I mean, every week it's just a different angle for inspiration. And on today's show, again, something really new, an employee who became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We have a lot of these people in our organizations. You know, we talk about the shortages of staffing. We talk about the inability to get quality people. We often overlook the fact that, you know, maybe they're not the majority of people in our businesses, but we have some really, really entrepreneurial, passionate people about our business. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're sitting in a staff shortage right now. So I have a tendency to be a little more white gloved with everybody. I think where the economy is going, we're going to start to see some of that change. But I got to tell you, anybody who has an individual like we're talking about with Alexandre today, who was an employee, these are the people you want to keep. These are the people you got to latch on to. They're the future of your business, and whether that is continuity of the business from an ownership perspective, or whether that is just ensuring that they're another set of eyes and selling the way you would, these are the people you got to keep.
And there are plenty of employees who have entrepreneurial instincts. Maybe they're early on in their career. Maybe they don't have the capital to start their own businesses. We're going to ask Alexandre, and I'm curious what your advice is, Mike, how to navigate a company, how to position yourself as a potential future shareholder.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things you got to recognize early on from an entrepreneurial standpoint. Is you have to have some sort of risk tolerance. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to be able to accept the fact that, you know, there's going to be risk coming at you on a regular basis, one way or another. You've got to accept the fact that you don't always know what tomorrow is. Many employees will bank on the fact that they have a payroll as opposed to worrying about what tomorrow may bring from an entrepreneurial standpoint. And I think the last one is you got to look at it as an employee. You got to look at it if it was your business. And you know, we always talk about, you know, those employees think like employees, but, you know, or you know, sometimes you even have owners who think like employees, which are very difficult. But, you know, for that handful of people, make sure you position yourself and say, hey, maybe you don't have the capital, but can you handle the risk that's associated with it? And, you know, I don't want to turn into a you know, a little bit of a philosophical discussion, but, you know, if you can't handle the heat, stay out of the kitchen. If you can't handle the risk, maybe you're not really meant to be an entrepreneur.
We're going to talk to Alexandre Guimond of Altitude Sport, online sporting apparel retailer. He's coming up, and Peter Moraitis is going to talk about some tax issues with rising inflation. So how the inflation can impact your tax bills. We're going to talk about that later in the program. But first, current affairs as usual, Mike. And I want to start the new year by talking about Web3, cryptocurrency, and the move on the part of some businesses to go into this kind of virtual metaverse kind of world. I want to read you one quote here. I thought that was funny in the context of the failure a few months ago of FTX, which is the cryptocurrency exchange. So new CEO John Ray is a specialist in this kind of thing. He saved several companies. He was with Nortel and others. He was with also Enron, interestingly, and recovered after that company's scandal. He says the following: "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here." What is it about this space that seems immune from the basic functionings of corporations and the basic rules of markets and business?
Well, I could start off with a quote basically from Warren Buffett, who, you know, from the beginning of this is basically looked at this and questioned this as the next bubble. Whether it is or it's not, I guess is irrelevant. But certainly from an older, more value-driven investor like a Buffett, there's so much that's unknown about cryptocurrency. And, you know, a lot of people think they understand it, and even half of those probably don't really understand it. And cryptocurrency has suffered, from a number of things, cybersecurity issues, just the plain understanding of what it is and how it operates. It's highly volatile. There's still no long-term proof in the pudding yet in terms of how it's ever going to be applied other than behind the scenes. I mean, the governments haven't agreed on how to tax it. We haven't agreed on whether there can be one currency. How are you going to adjust it on an exchange rate, or is it going to be the universal currency? At which point in time, how does that affect inflation, deflation, stagnation, and everything within various different countries. So there's a lot of things that really just haven't been touched on and that fall into, I guess, what we would consider to be sane and stable financial practices. So there's certainly a component of this. It's a bubble, and I mean, there's no doubt if you're on the wrong side of chasing it upwards, it can be very costly to get involved. A lot of people have lost a lot of people made a lot of money, and a lot of people have lost a lot of money in a very short period of time. And you go back before the holidays, and just following the FTX and what we dealt with, Alameda Research, there was a few others, and all of a sudden, somebody made the comparison to the banking crisis of 1930 and 1931, and this whole financial contagion mentality about how it just snowballs into an effect. And as we watched what happened over the 6 or 8 weeks towards the end of November and into early January, and we look at what's gone on, there's no doubt that there's a lot of people a little worried about what the overall effect is, and I think for those non-believers and non-investors in crypto, they may even be more concerned because there's actually a massive impact on the market that they figured was a fad in a bubble.
I'm not going to come down on all crypto. I'm not going to say it's not eventually going to work itself out and be a part of sort of our monetary systems. But on the early going, at least from what I can observe, Mike, the people that are into this and into Web3 and putting all their businesses 100% in the metaverse and all that, we're not talking about the most productive people necessarily in the business community. And some are sort of, I think, dodging the responsibilities as entrepreneurs. I saw one consultancy, they announced they were going to open their metaverse office and all that, and they were going to do business in crypto online and have the meetings in the metaverse and all that. I'm thinking, is there a demand for that? I mean, we're heading into a recession. There's serious problems around the world. Does anyone have time to play around in video games virtually? And what is the value add for business?
Well, I'll tell you, there's only one thing that saves our economy in and out of recessions and everything, and that's human greed. So long as human greed can prevail in something, you're always going to have somebody that's going to jump on board and find a purpose for it. My bigger problem with a lot of the cryptocurrency, once you get past there's a very logical component to this in the blockchain element in terms of safety and security. There's a lot of really good things, but the unregulated component to this, kind of feeds off what many people have complained on for years. That who were your first users of cryptocurrency? I mean, other than the techies, it was criminal use, right? So, when your underlying basis for something starts out like that, you need to establish, as you said at the beginning of this segment, you need to establish some standards, some criteria, some rules of engagement that people are going to use to go forward. And I think that most of the people that have been involved in this have either skirted those issues or downright avoided them.
I don't know if you caught the big news about the metaverse late last year, Mike, but there was a major technical development. The avatars, the character, the people in the metaverse got legs. So they made the press release that we now have legs for people in the metaverse. Big news.
Yeah, and shortly thereafter, I watched the price on some of these the metaverses, and the value had gone up. So cryptocurrency was collapsing on one side, yet the values in the metaverse were going through the roof. So I got to look at this and go, really, do we have any idea what we're doing?
Yeah, with all the problems Twitter has, I mean, Facebook bet a lot on the metaverse, and it's not necessarily working out so far. Also, in e-commerce, let's talk a bit about Jeff Bezos. This is from Inc.com. He and a Nobel Prize-winning economist who advises him use intuition to make better decisions. What is intuition? People say going with your gut, but when does intuition start? And when does the education you've accumulated over many years and your experience kind of become intuition?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to sit here and tell you I know where that line is for everyone. I mean, the reality is really intuition is, people have said for years that there's this common misconception that intuitive decisions are random. They signify a lack of skill. They're irresponsible. They are not based in fact. But I think if you drill down on the research, you'll find that a lot of those decisions that become gut or intuitive are really, like you said, based on years of experience and years of understanding. And if you will, let's call them educated guesses in some cases. But, we've said before that, luck has a part of things. And I think luck and uncertainty and timing all form part of making a good decision. And there's no doubt that, many people have succeeded where others have failed based on their gut. And I don't think you can leave that out of a conversation.
Now, when you say the gut, I mean, ultimately, most of that is an entrepreneur's acquired knowledge. I mean, going back to even George W. Bush used to say he made decisions, just right from the gut. And but in reality, there's probably stuff hidden back there that's informing those decisions.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of subconscious involved in our decision-making process. And if we take a look back after the gut decision, we can probably point to those decisions pre that, or the mistakes we make pre that defined our ability to make that gut decision or that intuitive decision. So I don't think it's, you wake up in the morning and make a bland call. I don't think the intuitive as to whether, something nothing about is all that good. I mean, if it was that good, people had that kind of gut feeling, they'd buy lotto tickets and win on a regular basis. So, here what we're really talking about is the ability to put into practice, without maybe the definition of the supporting documentation behind it, in order to justify a relatively sane decision that may not appear like that to everybody.
Just a pop quiz for you, Mike. What's an example of a gut decision in business you've made that's paid off?
Well, I think you've got to feel. Let's talk about the radio show. If you want to talk about something, you go back 15 years when Josh Miller and I decided that it was time to do a radio show. We took an opportunity in the marketplace where radio ads and radio time was suffering so heavily from the Great Recession that it was almost kind of a mindless decision to continue to drill this forward and move forward with it. It was a gut decision of making a call when everybody was selling, we bought, and vice versa. And, I think the show is 15 years. Like you said, you've never had a gig this long. So I think which was a terribly uninformed, or we thought an uninformed decision at the time, actually turned out really well.
Never had a media gig last this long. Never wanted to have a media gig last this long either. That's the great thing about the show, is it did start during a recession. Today we see it's also media is suffering because of the onslaught from digital. But I think now is a time when people are actually going to start flocking back to traditional media. We see some of that market share slipping away from Facebook and Twitter. Their results are not being delivered in the same way that traditional media delivered in recent years. So I'm optimistic anyway about the future of media and our place in it.
Yeah, I agree. Whatever that looks like going forward, the ability to have an opinion and to share that opinion and have a way to get information across to people, there's so many different ways to do it. And just because it might not be hip and sexy doesn't mean it's not effective and useful.
Yeah, there's the metaverse, but there's also, a 75-year-old institution that allows us to have these conversations. So it's really great.
I just fear somebody's going to turn me into an avatar and make my legs even shorter than they are now.
Well, you can adjust your avatar any way that you like, Mike. It's the metaverse.
Oh, man, maybe I can hit 5'6" or 5'8" if I can do that. Somebody give me an avatar quick.
Okay, Mike, it's time to get right to our guest. His name is Alexandre Guimond. He's the co-CEO of Altitude Sport and The Last Hunt. Alexandre, welcome to Inspiring Entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. So first question is the easiest. What is Altitude Sport?
Oh, Altitude Sport, we are one of the e-commerce leader in the Canadian market. Our goal is to equip our customers with the best possible product, which means that they have to be well designed and as durable as possible. So we sell premium apparel, premium gear at the intersection of outdoor and fashion. So you can imagine brands like The North Face, Patagonia, Icebreaker, Canada Goose, Macash, Barber, and so on. We sell more than 400 brands. And in terms of categories, we started with mainly hiking, camping, traveling, but expanded quickly in other segments like ski and snowboard, cycling, running, yoga, training, and so on. So really our goal is to follow our customers in their adventures, whether it's around the cottage life or being active in the city. So that's what we're about.
I like the intersection of fashion and the outdoors. A good angle, I guess, to take. Do you have any idea what the mix is?
The mix for me is having the technological quality of the outdoor and the aesthetically pleasing aspect of the fashion. I think everyone who bought outdoor equipment 10, 20, or 30 years ago knew that every outdoor piece was really an outdoor statement. It meant you were wearing the hiking outfit in the city, but now things are much more refined. And I think the city dwellers understood that living in Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver, you're facing four seasons, you're facing harsh weather, even taking the subway and walking in the city. So this is where we wanted to be, respecting the the diversity of climate and weather in the Canadian markets.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago where, we're talking about some of those names were really kind of, fringe and on the outside looking in from the mainstream when you got into North Face. The only person you knew that had one was actually hiking and spending all the time. Now it's a staple of most people's wardrobe.
I totally agree. I think people are looking for essentials or basic pieces and realize that a lot of the outdoor brands have been there for 30 years, pushing the limits of the fabric and, the quality. So, and now everybody has a piece that they know they can rely on and they can blend with other more, let's say, fashionable pieces. So.
Yeah, and I think we've learned over the years that, when you pay for quality, you get quality, and it lasts. Exactly. Sometimes your sense of fashion is gone long before your sense of the equipment itself. So
totally agree. That's where we want to be in the better buy, better choose area. So
you made the comment before about being an e-commerce retailer, and I've seen the term pure play e-commerce retailer. Maybe just explain that to our audience, what you mean by pure play e-commerce retailer.
But for us, it means that everything we do is around the online experience. We have no physical stores. We have 3 websites. 2 of them are transactional. We have an office in Montreal and a distribution center near the airport in Montreal. But if you want to buy from us, you have to order online. If you want to try our products, you will have to order multiple sizes and colors and ship back what doesn't fit. So really, it's everything we do as the online experience in its mind. A lot of retailers have a blend approach, right? They have stores and a portion of online experience. Our focus for us, 100%, the team thinks about online aspects all the time and perfecting the experience we give the customer every day.
The one thing that's remarkable about your site to me is the diversity of brands. I see you have a lot of pretty solid winter brands there. You mentioned the North Face. Another one of my favorites lately, especially in Laurentian's winter, is Icebreaker. I'm wearing at least 2-3 Icebreaker items of clothing right now. Tell me about the I guess the sophistication of some of these brands. I mean, this is some pretty heavily engineered products.
But that's it. When it comes to outdoor brands, you have to imagine that a lot of let's say the customers of these brands, they practice sports and dedicate a lot of hours practicing a certain sport, whether it's climbing or running and etc. So all the other brands have always pushed the limits of the fabric, the way they process their yarn or the fiber, and the goal, right, is always to kind of achieve some technical qualities, whether the item has to be the lightest or the warmest or the most packable or the most waterproof. So, and this is where we become very geeky about the products we sell. Icebreaker, for example, is made of merino wool. And for me, an image that speaks to the quality of their product is that they take the wool from the sheep that lives in mountains, very high mountains. So normally the animal will go from plus 40 degrees Celsius when they're walking in the valley, and then minus 30 degrees Celsius in the mountain where they have to face the hardships of winters. So the fiber, having to adapt to such a wide range of temperature, is really resilient, super soft, super warm. It will stay warm even if it's wet. So this is why a lot of people choose merino wool. And you know what? We have to face this kind of weather range in Canada, right? So this is why I like this image. So this is one example. Other brands, they're really good about processing their yarn, making it waterproof. They will give it a little twist so that the repellent on it will be more durable, and then they will blend it into a fabric that they will cover with repellent again. So they go in really, really small details to make sure that the experience of the customer will be good for many years, even after multiple washing machine cycles or abrasion on the while climbing or skiing and so forth. So this is where what I like about the brands. This is what got me into this business. I always felt that these products were much better than, let's say, the average T-shirt or pants on the street, and this is why we kind of push these brands year after year.
So with the chain, I mean, you weren't always a full-on e-commerce retailer. At one point, you had some stores. So when you made the shift, I mean, obviously there's a strategic decision to make that shift. Maybe walk us through what led you to that and why. I mean, other than looking back on it and going, "Hey, that was a great move." Now, in hindsight, what led you there, and what were some of the biggest obstacles you faced?
back in 2004, when I joined the company, we had already a small website. It really started because we were doing a lot of special orders. So we were a small store, really trying to give the best possible advice to our customers. We didn't have a big store. It was 1,000 square feet. So when people visited us, they didn't expect to see all the models or colors, right? We couldn't carry the overall selection, all the possible options from each brand. So we relied on catalogs. We relied on showing our website and saying, hey, see what you're looking for. We may not have it in store, but we're able to order it for you and ship it to your destination or to your home address. So that pretty much what started the online for us, because we were already doing a lot of catalog order and shipping north of Quebec, north of Ontario to RCMP or other specialized customers that were requesting really technical items. So at some point, I started handling the website, got an interest in Google AdWords, the new online advertising tools that were coming in 2004, 2005, and realized we kind of had an opportunity there, right? Because we were able to display all the products, all the sizes and colors, width, length, even super technical items that you couldn't find in bigger stores because they were so niche that a normal brick and mortar wouldn't even dare carrying it. Well, we were, ordering it, and if it doesn't fit, we would return it to their brand. So at some point, we saw the opportunity of expanding through the online world. The competition was fierce, and when it came to brick and mortar, and we felt that developing the online catalog was a good option for us. We're already good at shipping worldwide or throughout Canada, and for us also. We had lived a few, warmer winter or, the seasonality of the store in Saint Denis Street. We knew that if we're able to ship orders in other areas in the Canadian market, we were able to kind of leverage a wider customer base, being able to there's always somewhere where it's snowing in the Canadian market, but when you have like a kilometer area around your store, it's tougher sometimes to pass through harder seasons. So, and honestly, in the end, we felt that I've always been an avid online shopper. I would say I'm an early adopter of buying anything online. And I always thought it was a better experience, being able to shop online on a Sunday morning with your coffee, have everything delivered the next day, try it at home, see if it fits with your other equipment, if your wife will like it and so on, and then returning everything. Maybe I'm a lazy shopper, but I felt it was way more efficient than, driving to the 3 or 4 stores to find the perfect fit and then regretting not buying the first one. And so we really felt the experience online was better for the customer. And that's where we're willing to invest, like make a point of try our way of shopping. You'll never go back after that.
I got to tell you, Alex, the big advantage to me of online shopping is not having to deal with people.
I completely agree. Some people like going, but I'm the kind of guy who likes reading everything and skipping the line all the time. So.
Alexandre, you do have a partner, right? So tell us about your co-CEO situation real quick, please.
Well, my co-CEO is a long-term friend. We were in high school together. Eventually, we moved to Montreal for university, right? And at the time, I was a sales clerk at Altitude Sports, selling products on the floor. And my mind was towards being in the outdoors, traveling, and enjoying the staff discount at the store. At the time, I was studying philosophy. So, of course, when you finish your undergrad in philosophy, it doesn't mean you have a clear career path. Some do, but I didn't. And I started asking myself what I wanted to do with my life. And I realized I really enjoy the kind of product that we sell. I like the customer we talk to every day. They always have an interesting adventure coming ahead. And I thought, you know what? I like my day-to-day job, right? So maybe I can make that a career. And the online business was starting to pick up. I was taking care of it. I was seeing what was happening online in the US market and elsewhere. The e-commerce was starting to rise. And every evening, or I would say very often, I was coming back to the apartment and was having these discussion with Maxime Dubois, my co-CEO and business partner. And he was an advertising, and he still is an advertising specialist, was working for a famous agency in Montreal. And at some point, he started helping me, with writing ads for Google pay-per-click or rebranding, positioning ads in newspapers and things like that. And he got interested in the online advertising too. And I started talking with the owner at that time about buying some shares or, becoming a partner in the business, because I wanted this kind of motivation and kind of ownership that I had my store too, in a way. And Max joined as a marketing director of one people, right? He was his only employee in the marketing department. We were a team of 10 maybe at the time. And after a few years, we started having discussions about buying the whole store together. I guess we were lucky and, in the right context to be able to have those discussions. The previous owner was kind of okay moving to something else. He had other projects. He was a bit older than us, and he saw that we were really passionate about what we were doing. So he agreed to sell us the Altitude Sports banner with the store. And in 2011, Max and I became the owners of Altitude Sports. At the time, we had 2 stores and an online website that was bigger than the 2 stores. We had managed to grow the business enough that it became bigger than the 2 stores. And over time, we made a decision to really focus there. So we ended up closing the stores after a few years. When the leases were done, we thought, look, we have to really focus on one thing we can be good at, and e-commerce was the way to go for us. And since that time, we've grown about 35% every year up until today. So the business has changed quite a lot. Today we're 400 employees, let's say in low season, and 800 in peak season when we have contractuals for the distribution center and the customer experience.
Amazing. Quickly, just Alexandre, any advice for entrepreneurs who find themselves still employees and who want to make that journey? Is it learning the systems, learning the processes? What steps would you advise people take to go from employee to owner?
I think there's 2 things I would say. I think you have to behave in the way that of the role that you want to occupy, right? I think really early on, I started seeing the store as my store, even though it was not. And I've always invested my time and dedication to making things better all around. I think you should not wait to have a specific role to behave as if you have that role. I think the previous owner really enjoyed me helping out and trying to push the limit, and seeing that I was passionate. He was open to, let's say, letting me become a partner. So that would be my first advice. And second advice is really surround yourself with the right people, and be able to accept the advice that they give. Because I think there's one thing about finding the mentors or the skilled individuals that you think could help you along the journey. And this is already a challenge to find them and convince them to help you. But once you have them, Max and I have always being careful about accepting the advices, and because it's easy sometimes to think that things don't apply to you, or you have a better understanding of your own reality, and a bit like a teenager, sometimes your mentors will tell you should maybe consider this or that, and you will think about your own way. But we were really able to grow faster and take some shortcuts because we benefited from the knowledge of older, experienced people that really helped us. So I think the humility to just say, yeah, okay, this is work that I think more about it and see how it applies to my situations.
Very interesting. On your website, you have in the new in section a section called New Stories, and it really doesn't relate to you. I mean, it's about some of the products and some of the people behind the products. But what was the inspiration of trying to deviate out from the product and kind of give this personal approach to some of the stories that are within your industry?
We try to make everything a little more personal. I think one of the important concepts we have in the business is trust. We've always seen any of our relationship in a long-term way with our customers, with our employees, with our partners, brands, and alike. When we give advice to our customer, we want to be transparent, honest. If we don't know the answer, we'll say it, we'll find it. If we don't have the product, we'll tell the customer where to find it. We're really about kind of making the perfect match between the customer and their product. And even if it means not having the sale, right away, we want them to know that they can always call us and rely on us. Same thing applies with their products. We want them to be able to trust their products, trust the brands that we carry, and know that if we are advising to choose this brand or this product, they won't be disappointed. And the stories, or let's say the context around our brands, was always very important, because I think as a customer, and I am a customer, and I was not as educated as I am right now in terms of my own brands, right? So I know it's tough to choose. Some customers, they have access to too much information, right? With the especially online, it's easy to find tons of reviews on anything, but it's hard to really believe that, okay, I'm making the right choice. You can even doubt about the 5 stars reviews, right, on a specific website. So bringing more information about the brand, the people behind their brand, our team, people working at for example, Icebreaker or other of our partners was always, an interesting angle, just to show how much work is behind those products, how much knowledge is behind the product. A lot of our brands are very thoughtful about the way they do things, and I think it's understated in the market. And this is where we can kind of show that it's not just a thing to say this product is better than the other one. I can prove it, and let's take some time providing this information in a different light. So that's what we try to do with those news stories.
I think, we can, it's a nice segue into the next topic, which is, the importance in the marketplace. And the importance in the marketplace isn't just for the user. There's the environmental component, which I know is, quite big in the way you look at things, and the philanthropic approach to doing things within the community. A number of people have commented in the past little while on Yvon Chouinard in Patagonia giving away his company. We've also seen, the reuse, renew philosophy on Black Fridays, which were his, which I know you guys maybe talk to us a little bit about how you place yourself and what the influence not only on the products you're selling and the people, but on the environment and giving back.
I think in the outdoor industry, all the brands have always been conscious about this aspect, right? When you enjoy the outdoors, over time you realize that we are hurting the outdoors in some way, by developing our society as we're developing it right now. So brands and retailers in the industry have always been cautious about that and conscious about the impact on nature. I think in our instance, the first statement we make with our business is, if we are able to sell the best possible product, that they are durable, that people will enjoy them on a long lifespan, this is already good, right? Instead of buying items and changing them every 3 months because fashion change, or it was not made to resist more than 2 or 3 washing cycles. So that was the first statement. After that, of course, everything around how the product is made, how it's the supply chain, the fabric, the colors, the chemicals involved in this process. We have discussions on a regular basis with our brands around those topics. This year we started doing our B Corp certification. It's a 2-year process for us, but we are auditing pretty much everything, our policies, the way we buy our products, our shipping method, an all-around tour of the business to understand our GES footprint and how we can do better. We have a lot of partnership with different organizations. I personally am on the board of Protect Our Winter, which is an organization that advocates, around climate change to better educate every outdoor enthusiast, but every person in general on how we can make better choices and how we can change our behavior. So it was always an important topic, and we have. Of course, like Patagonia, there are strong brands that are even more vocal about what they do around the environment. And of course, that's very inspiring what Yvon Chouinard did with his company. I'd say for me, it was one of the reasons I got into business when I was at university. I had a business ethics class, and we studied quite thoroughly Mountain Equipment Co-op and Patagonia. And those 2 businesses I found were able to grow, drive business, talk about profit, and having healthy development while defending values. So I think that's what we do with Altitude Sports in the end. And every year we try to do better. So in the next few years, we will be a bit more vocal about what we do. We had the tendency of not talk about those aspects too much, because there's also a lot of greenwashing, in general. And I think these topics are so complex that sometimes you even doubt yourself that, am I really doing such an impact? But more than ever, I think we are having a positive impact, and the B Corp certification will help us see through that and make choices that are even better.
We're chatting with Alexandre Guimond, co-CEO of Altitude Sport, and we'll have his one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs on the way. Stay tuned for that. But first, coming up, we'll chat with our tax partner, Peter-Joseph Moraitis, about the tax implications of rising interest rates. Peter, welcome back.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
And Mike, rising interest rates, we expect, at least one more bump, I guess, in the short term, but we'll have to see how the year goes. Lots of implications there in terms of taxes.
Yeah, I think we always look at interest rates and the effects on the housing market or on credit card debt or everything else. We always have a tendency to forget there's a tax implication to interest rates. And Pete, I'm sure you're going to give us a little bit of insight into what's some of those things that are going to affect all of us with regards to interest rate hikes and taxes.
Yes, I know that it's something exactly like you're saying on the financial side. And although rates might seem to be at the peak, the cumulative effect is starting to have an impact on businesses and owners. So as of January 2023, the government has increased the rates now for the fourth time. Essentially, the prescribed rate, which is the rates that kind of dictate certain tax rules and what the government charges. So it's not just the banks that are increasing what they're charging, but it's when there's a balance owing to the government, have increased as of January 1st. The prescribed rate, which is what we use a lot whenever there are loans, certain loans that are made within a related group that where the government requires you to charge a minimum amount of interest. One of these that we do a lot for income splitting is where someone who has a high income loans funds to a spouse or to another trust for, let's say, their kids or their beneficiaries, and the income from that loan is invested on the market and earns a rate, and that net income after the interest expense actually can get allocated to other family members without it being taxed in the higher income earner. So that rate is going to be 4% in January, whereas back in June 2022 it was 1%. So that's a considerable increase. The good news is any of these spousal or trust loans that were done prior, like in prior years, they kind of like were locked into the equivalent of a fixed mortgage rate, where they get to keep the same lower rate that they had, which was actually 1% for the long time.
So, Pete, those rates get grandfathered in. So if I signed into an agreement when the rate was 1%, then effectively that gets carried forward as a 1% and doesn't automatically have to get bumped up to the new rate.
Correct. Up until that loan is repaid, essentially, if the spouse or the trust repays the loan, it'll continue at the 1%. It's only new loans that would be at the higher rate.
Discuss maybe a little bit the implications of not using the prescribed rates. I mean, let's say the prescribed rate is 4% and you enter an agreement at 2% with somebody. What ends up being the implication?
That's a good question. Essentially, if that amount isn't charged, then the person who lent the money will have to report at least that amount of income. So if you don't charge it, then you could be caught with an element of double tax, where it's still taxable for the spouse, and the person who lent the money, for example, is deemed to have that income as well. So
I lend the money out at 2%, the rate's 4%, and I turn around and I'm going to get stuck declaring that extra 2% from the 2 to 4%, and my spouse is not going to be able to bump that up from 2 to 4. They're going to get stuck deducting only the 2%.
Correct.
So there's a 2% loss right away from using the wrong rate.
Okay. Exactly. There's also other implications for the prescribed rate. A lot of smaller run owner-manager companies who essentially draw money from their businesses, and at the end of the year, they meet their accountants 6 months later, and they essentially declare those amounts as dividends based on an effective date, or they leave them on their balance sheet for at least 2 balance sheets. There's a rule where advances made to a shareholder, as long as they're repaid or declared as dividend to the shareholder within 24 months, are not included in their income. If they last longer, then they are fully taxable. So it becomes like a salary. And since I've been practicing, because the last time the prescribed rate has been at this amount was 2007. So for the longest time, it's really been this 1%. And we've never really worried about what would be the implication to a shareholder that does take money from the company and doesn't repay it until the 24 months. But there is actually an interest benefit for a shareholder who takes money from a company. And now that's going to be at 4%. So if ever a shareholder is taking money from their company and only declaring, let's say, a dividend, declaring that amount as a dividend a year and a half later, they might be at risk of, if it depends on how much is being withdrawn, but there could be now a bit of exposure now for some income, like if ever there's an audit for there would be some interest income that wasn't included.
I think the implications, and you go back to 1%, the implications of borrowing money from your company, over the years, we've seen a lot of people forget to do the calculations. Well, if it gets added back at 1%, it's not the end of the world. Now we're talking about adding it back at 4%. Now we're starting to get into a sizable component. And I know just before the holidays, the government looked at indexing some of its government brackets. They're making some changes to the tax-free savings account limits, capital gains limits. You want to just maybe touch on those quickly before we finish up?
Yeah. So every year the government essentially increases certain benefits limits, or like we call the brackets, I guess. So because inflation has gone up, they've also considerably increased a lot of these brackets. So now like the top marginal rate, which used to be I always refer to it as 200,000, but now it's 235,000. The indexation amount for 2023 is 6.3%, which is more than maybe the last 4 years combined. Really, like I think it's something that's going to be that's going to impact. One of the things that, like, as a tax advisor, we look at a lot is the capital gains exemption, which is when shares are sold, is now going to be 971,000, up from the low 900s. So that's going to be a real increase for anybody who sells their business. And the TFSA is jumping up in 2023 to 6,500, up from 6,000.
And as we come to the end of the show, let's turn to our guest, Alexandre Guimond of Altitude Sport, and we'll ask the co-CEO for his one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs. Alexandre, what do you think?
I think one piece of advice for me that has worked for me is really connecting with other entrepreneurs, really establishing bonds with people that you admire. Don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to use LinkedIn, cold call, email, try to connect through a common connaissance. For me, I've had a lot of 5 assets or coffee talk discussion with a lot of people, even worldwide, that we're very happy to connect and share best practices and pieces of knowledge. And I find that people are very generous. I think you just assume sometimes that they won't have the time or they're too busy. But honestly, like I've spoken with so many busy people that were happy to take the time to share insights. So just try it and don't be discouraged if they don't reply the first time. Sometimes I've emailed a brand for 7 years until we managed to open their account, and I think the resilience paid off at some point, and we have a good relationship now. So just keep trying and don't be afraid of reaching out.
Thanks, Alexandre. I'm borrowing from a marketer, Mitch Joel, here, but he says your network is your net worth. So I thought that was a good one. And yeah, I assume you agree. And Mike, just a really great example of the fact that in some companies, there are entrepreneurs there. They're in the company. They're employees. They just haven't become an owner yet.
No, I think there's a lot of people that, you can usually tell there's some sense of passion and excitement and sense of ownership, regardless of whether they have title to shares or not. And, those people are always going to look at this as an entrepreneurial opportunity. And whether that, like I said, that finds its way into shares, or whether that finds its way into the passion and the way they deal with people, it's phenomenal. And we all know that when you find those players, when you find people in your organizations like that, those are the people you want to keep. And that's the future of our businesses.
Thanks so much for stopping by, Alexandre.
Thanks for having me. Have a good day.
A reminder, you can subscribe to Inspiring Entrepreneurs Montreal as a podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, or your favorite platform. And you can also log on to the website, inspiringentrepreneursmtl.com, for hundreds of local entrepreneur profiles over the last decade and a half. See you back here next week.
Thanks, Dan.
This has been a production of TNKR Media. Good talk.